All right, so here we go. We're going to go through some scenarios. This is the first one. You have a patient walking across an intersection, hit by a car. Vehicle was involved in a motor vehicle accident just prior to striking the patient. EMS, fire, police have all responded. Patient's got multiple injuries and is unresponsive. Open fractures in both legs, a lot of bleeding, vitals are deteriorating. Fire and police were on scene first. Fire starts treating the patient in front of many bystanders that were helping the victim. Did a HIPAA violation occur?
They were all providing aid.
Patient's unresponsive. There's no medical information being exchanged.
That was police and fire, which is not everything.
Right, and they started care before you
Right.
came on, right? Right. First responders need to treat the patients in the environment in which they're found. There are no reasonable measures could be taken to assure the patient's privacy, so it's okay. I mean, hopefully they're not jumping, I mean, they're treating the patient, they're not talking, have a billboard with the patient's,
Yeah.
you know,
We're gonna go through their wallet and get their license and put their information up and
Right,
show it to
right.
everybody.
Right.
And I think
Thank you.
that goes back to what you were asking a little bit ago, is if the police officer does get in the back of the ambulance, yes, you have every right to ask him to leave.
Yeah.
That's not a problem.
That's
But
the issue that
it's
I
not.
run into.
It's also not a HIPAA violation if you continue to provide treatment to that patient while they are in the back.
I can provide treatment, but if I continue to ask them questions, I guess if the patient's offering that with the officer there, that's why I try to keep the door shut. I try to get, because like a lot of times when we're gathering our assessment, you know, the patient might have drank alcohol, they might have used drugs. Those are all things that are kind of pertinent to the way I'm going to treat them. But ultimately, if they decide not to go to the hospital, that's also something that could be used against them. And that's why I try to ask them all these questions while nobody's there to witness it, because it's private between us. And it'll be in my run sheet. If they want to subpoena it, they can. But we have a lot of officers who just come to the side of our door and just jump in, and that's...
Well, your first priority is what?
So it's care. However, sometimes those patients we know aren't going to go to the hospital, but we still have to gather that information.
Sure.
And if they're not in a life-threatening, and sometimes they're not in a life-threatening situation, we simply are there. Yeah, my arm hurts, but I'm okay. I don't want to go to the hospital. Well, they told me their arm hurts, so now I'm obligated to collect information on them. But if I keep continuing to get that information in the presence of that officer, they could potentially be incriminating themselves.
I would worry less about that because that's not a potential HIPAA breach from your perspective, which is what we're concerned about. But I think that your gut instinct is right. You need to have space to treat a patient.
Right.
And make your assessment before other people are trying to get their pieces of information as well.
And that's what ultimately what I try to do. And I tell the officers, listen, let me finish my assessment. As soon as I'm done, they're going to sign my paper. I'll cut them loose. You can ask them whatever you want. But and I honestly try to portray it in the, you know, hey, we need to get cut loose so we're available again to make another run.
Right.
And that is kind of true. That's what we're doing. But I'm also trying to do it to protect the patient as well, not simply because of sensitive information because everybody's a drug addict. That's not the reason. But you know, there are embarrassing situations, or somebody's on an antibiotic for some reason they don't want anybody else to know about. We need to know about it, so we may need to make sure it's not medically clouding their judgment. But it's really not the police's business that they're taking an antibiotic because they've got, you know, raging herpes or whatever they've got. So
He did go there.
So yeah, that I mean that's kind of the embarrassing kind of stuff we get into. I mean that not everything has to do with them being drunk or an addict. It might just be something medical.
Well, and you want the patient to tell you information that is important for your care of the patient.
Right.
So I think your instinct to go in the back and try to do your assessment without others watching is great.
We've all had to cut people's clothes off in the middle of the street and, you know, treat their broken legs and breathe for them and all that kind of stuff. In those situations, yeah, I mean, there's nothing that we have to do what we have to do. But there are certain situations that, I mean, I'm not gonna say 90%, but a lot of the runs that we do is simply taking their vitals and gathering information and cutting them loose. So,
Okay. Next one. EMS crew loads the patient into the ambulance and starts treating the patient. A few minutes later, a firefighter brings a priest over. Says he knows the patient. Priest asks about the patient's condition and asks if the patient is going to die. Is this a HIPAA issue? You got a priest asking you about the patient's condition and if the patient is going to die.
As long as
I
you
would
don't
think
give
so.
them,
You would think so?
I would think it would be.
as long as you don't give out information, I don't see where it would be.
Is it an issue? No. Is it a potential for an issue? Yes.
Yes.
Because you haven't said, it doesn't say that you've given any information yet.
That's
If
good.
you
So
give the information, it is a violation, but if you don't, you have to
it's potentially a violation. Potentially a violation. What do you have to do? What's important about this?
we can't really tell the priest, the only thing we can really tell them is if it's like that.
It's incoming information.
How do you know? I mean, I could walk up and say, I'm the priest.
Well, exactly, you're,
Well,
Sorry, Father, I can't talk about it. But pray, and
yeah.
let's go.
Or just say, right.
So it's potentially a violation, but you can give, you have to verify the information or verify that there is a relationship between this particular patient and the priest. If you can verify that, and I'm not really sure how you would verify that, but if you could verify that this is legitimately the priest
What happens?
for this
Like, hey,
patient,
patient, do you know this
you
guy?
can,
Let me see your
Is
cross.
it okay if I talk to him about you?
Have them sign
yeah,
the
if
release real
the
quick.
patient is conscious, yeah, you can do that.
Yeah,
Proceed with caution, but here's where we get our catchphrase of minimum necessary information required. You're not going to give the priest the full story. You're going to give the priest the minimum amount of information necessary to.
I'm old and salty, I would probably give them information, but it's not medical information I would give out.
Okay. Well, if the patient is conscious, the patient can provide his or her own information to the priest.
I think that, and I will say potentially that has something to do with the fact of if you're Catholic or not. Because, I mean, if you think somebody's gonna die and they potentially should get last rites,
Yeah.
is that something and that, I mean, that's a personal feeling
That's
from
a
the
good point.
paramedic, the practitioner. I'm not Catholic, I don't know, I couldn't be, I'm probably not, I'm gonna tell them to get out of my truck. So, I pretty much tell everybody that.
There's a theme
so.
going on there.
Yeah, you're right.
Well, you got to use your professional judgment, right? That's another thing you can fall back on. Use your professional judgment. Under the circumstances, is it reasonable for you to allow him access to the patient or not?
It's like when you yell at that firefighter, what the hell are you opening
Yeah.
that door for?
Exactly, yeah, you're exactly. That's why we put locks in the back of our trucks, we just lock them all out.
The electronic locks are the best invention ever.
Oh my God, people keep banging, I don't hear nothing, keep going, bro.
Well, unless you're in a hurry to get out of the truck and leave your truck running, then you'll have to.
Yeah, that's.
You know,
All right, next scenario. A few minutes, same scene. A few minutes later, a police officer brings an obviously upset woman to the rig who states that the patient is her son and asks if he will live and what his condition is.
How old's the patient?
How old is the patient? Good question.
Because if it's this one, yeah,
Better tell me.
better tell me. You better tell me now.
What do we need to? We need a little bit more information in order to make this call. What would you like to know?
Is the patient an adult? Because even if the patient's over 18, even if they're a parent, it really doesn't matter.
Don't matter.
How do you know as a parent?
Yeah, exactly. But if they're over 18.
Ask that
to
cop,
me,
you
it
verified
doesn't
her parent or whatever? Bro, get her out of here.
matter.
Good instincts.
All these scenarios feel like it's just delaying everything that
Yeah.
we're doing. That's what it just feels like.
Well, remember, let's go through our decision-making process. The information being requested is going out. It's being given to the police officer, not to the woman yet. Ask the police officer to confirm the identity, that it is indeed the mother of the patient. And then proceed with caution, minimum necessary. Give that police officer the minimum necessary. Obviously, once you feel comfortable that the mother has been identity has been verified, she is going to approach the patient and you're be all in your business.
She's the mom. Cool, next question. How old's the patient?
Yeah,
23. Cool. See you later, mom.
yeah.
Right.
No, not like
Next scenario. An adult who knows some kids who were involved in a collision that occurred in the field asks you about how the kids from that collision are doing. The adult is not a parent of either kid involved in the collision. Can you tell her anything about how the kids are doing?
Direct them to mom or dad, regardless.
You would direct the,
Give him, just be like, we're taking care of him right now, and if you want to know anything further, just contact their parental unit.
okay. What
Don't
if,
give them
This
the
sounds like later
parent's
on,
name.
like
Because
last
they
week,
know them, they
these
should
kids
already
crashed
know.
in a field.
Right.
Just referring to the
Just
PIO.
go back to my favorite. It was a shark attack.
Which is also.
What happened? Shark attack.
Sorry,
Or
Dad.
Wayne-
Like, wait, he recorded? Yeah, yeah. Precisely.
Why is it true shark?
Wayne Sharp.
so you can't tell her anything about how the kids are doing. She's not a relative, and she's not an authorized representative of those
She's
kids.
a nosy Nancy.
All right, next. You arrive at the hospital, you transfer care over to the hospital providers. While writing your PCR, a crew member from another department, who has been looking over your shoulder while you write your report, states, "Wow, that was a bad one, huh?" I can't imagine someone's really gonna be looking over your shoulder, but if someone does, did a HIPAA violation occur?
Show my video.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Only crew members who were directly involved in the specific call, supervisors and other administrative personnel should be reading PCRs and other protected health information. If you are using that PCR later on in a training, some education that you all are doing, would that be okay?
Yes.
It would be okay. Would it be even better if in that training, the protected health information was redacted? So like the patient's name and other identifiers?
Yeah.
Yes. So you want to make efforts to protect that information if you don't need it for the purpose. Okay, next one. Police officers on the scene and at the hospital requested certain information, including the patient's identity, patient's condition. And they are requesting this information as part of a potential fatality investigation. Is it a HIPAA violation to provide this information? We got shaking of the heads, no.
I mean, that's what the hospital's PIO is for, right? Like,
There is a,
you go talk to them, bro. That hospital admin take care of that for you.
Does this happen when you guys are on scene? Yes, it does?
Yeah.
I mean, usually I'm having to ask for the information from the cops, so.
Right.
Hey, bud, you got their driver's license? Can I have that?
So this is not a HIPAA violation. The cop is investigating potential fatal in motor vehicle crash, so you can provide them with that information. But again, I'm gonna sound like a broken record by the end of this. You say it with me, use the minimum necessary information to do the task that's being asked of you. All right, next up, several weeks later, you are contacted by the patient's attorney. They have the run report. They contacted, got your name, found out who you are, how to contact you. They want to talk to you about this particular accident and the patient's injuries. Is it a HIPAA violation to speak with the patient's attorney?
how do you know
I don't know if
the
they're their
patient's
attorney.
attorney?
Then we have a signed document, I tell them you need to contact the hospital,
Admin.
well, admin or
So I would love
medical
to talk
records
to you as soon
department.
as you get my management to tell me to.
I actually won't ever talk to them until I get a subpoena. I literally have had them come to me and ask me, like, no, I need a subpoena.
So it's, possibly, you want to confirm the identity of the caller, ask him to provide authorization that he is a representative of the patient, which they should be able to provide But the best case scenario is to take it to your supervisor, let them work out the details if they need to. And if the attorney really wants to talk to you and wants the information, they're gonna work within the administration to get the access to you. They should not be barraging you.
This doesn't happen as much as it used to, but we used to, years ago, when I first started, we used to get ambulance chasers call us and start prodding us for information.
Yeah.
And I just got in the habit of saying, if you really need to talk to me, you'll produce a subpoena. And just hang up on them, because, you know, they were prodding us for information. They had no information to offer. They were fishing.
Yeah, they were looking to see if this was the case they wanted to
Yeah,
pursue.
exactly.
Okay,
Just,
so,
just so you guys know what's gonna happen in that situation, if we get that, and we do get that request, our first call is gonna be to Catherine. She's gonna be the one that's gonna be preparing you for the deposition. She's gonna be the one sitting down with you. That's the reason why she's here today to talk about this, is because we're gonna use her for those type of incidents.
Jeremy's gonna email Lisa, Lisa's gonna email me, and then I'll be reaching out to you. I've done it before. It's no fun. It doesn't happen very often. It's not something to worry about. But, it does happen.
Yeah, this was 25 years ago, they actually used to fax us stuff to our EMS fax machine and just wanting us to send them the report. I'm like, nah, this is hinky. Yeah, and then it was like, okay, you contact Health Records. This was years ago. It was crazy.
I bet it was also pre-HIPAA.
It was. Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Don't want.
Moving on. All right, so now we know what PHI, Protected Health Information, is, and the rules around that. You want to know when the minimum necessary requirements are needed. You want to respect the privacy of the patient and the confidentiality of that patient's protected health information, and act in the best interest of the patient. Here's another scenario. You have a repeat patient within a week, and the patient has overdosed. Patient needs to go to the hospital but is refusing. You ask the patient's family to step out so you can speak with the patient privately. The family refuses. Is it a HIPAA violation to discuss previous encounters or medical issues with the patient in front of the patient's family? How do you handle this situation?
Like, is it okay
Yeah,
if I talk to you about this in front of them?
Right.
Yeah.
But ultimately, if they say no and you start saying stuff, that it is a high HIPAA violation, right?
Well, let's think about that. What are you trying to get from this patient? Current medical information. Now, the patient's known to you because you've had a previous encounter with her. What if that prior information is not necessary to your treatment of the patient? Well, it may not be, I mean, you can ask, and if you ask the patient, like your instinct was, well, is it okay if I talk about your health care in front of your friends or family? If the patient says yes, you're good. If the patient says no, ask again if the friends and family can let you do your job and talk to the patient about her medical care.
Or call the cops.
Mm-hmm.
Educate these people.
Well, theoretically, if it's an overdose, the cops are out here. Theoretically.
Station.
She's not food.
This day.
What, I'm going to expound on this a little bit. What about going back to talking with the patient's family and caregivers from before? What kind of information do you think it would be okay to disclose to, thinking about minimum information necessary, what information would be okay to disclose to that family member who's there? Say the patient goes to the hospital. What do you think would be okay to disclose? Where the patient's going?
Why do I need to disclose anything?
Well, I mean, this is one of those instances where I want you to understand the exception, what you can share with a family or.
Like if a patient was in dire straits and didn't need to go to a critical access, I could tell them they're going to, on specialty hospital, bypassing one hospital to another due to their current condition.
Yes. Could you tell them anything else about their current condition?
I wouldn't,
Permission.
because it's not pertinent. They just need to know where they're going.
Yeah, I think that the minimum necessary, you guys have this as your instinct. Just have to, I'm just putting a name to it now.
Trust some people.
Trust but verify.
No, I mean, like, I'll tell them, like, we can't go X, Y, Z because of their condition, so instead we need to go to ABC because it's more appropriate to care for their immediate needs.
Okay. That's giving them, hey, here's here's where they're headed, here's some general information about their medical condition, except that their immediate needs. You're just
Right,
saying they need
right.
to go there.
They go here because they're better equipped to handle their condition.
Okay?
So what's wrong with them?
Nacho.
You could say you have to ask the providers when you get there, right?
Like, I can't diagnose anything, you'll have to wait until.
Okay, so here we have a picture of you all.
Name me.
That ain't none of us.
I know.
Well, it's on the website. It's on your website.
We need new pictures on there.
Training and education, because you are a training and education center, you have students and ride-alongs and employees and guests in your building. You also have maintenance folks who come in and clean, outside contractors occasionally in the building. How do you prevent these folks from seeing protected health information when they are in your building? I'm sorry, what was that?
Don't leave it laying around.
Don't leave it unattended.
Put it in your locker, put it in the safe. Lock your computer before you walk away from it, or else that guy will change your stuff.
It's not just him.
What about if you're having a conversation with somebody in the hallway about a run you just came back from?
I don't know if I'm directly involved in care, they weren't my administrator.
Don't name
That wasn't about training, I would think it'd be a violation.
But
Yeah,
as long
well-
as you're not dropping their name, social security
Exactly.
number and all that.
Don't be using their.
Like, man, I had this old lady, bro, she broke her leg, it was so bad, we started big IVs, gave a lot of pain meds. They don't know who you're talking about.
Yeah, no patient identifiers, but otherwise, yeah, it's okay. But you just want to mainly be aware of your surroundings. If there is a guest in the building, if you have a student or a ride-along, something like that, you want to be careful. Should you adopt a paperless documentation process to assist with this?
Not according to Indiana state laws.
Would love to,
No.
would love to.
Would it matter? Would it matter if you had a paperless system? Would it matter?
According to Indiana state law, apparently it does.
Well, but the same rules apply for HIPAA. You can't leave it unattended. You might be in the middle of your report, you leave your iPad on the table, same thing as leaving a piece of paper with the patient's protected health information all over it. Same protections apply, so paperless system isn't necessarily going to fix the HIPAA concerns.
I mean, I left it in the care of the hospital. If somebody else sees it after that, that's on the hospital.
Well, they have to follow HIPAA too.
Right.
Me.
Miles puts the
That
yellow
one on
copy
me.
face down.
That was your sheet, not my sheet.
Yoshi.
All right, here you have transfer documents. Let's talk about sheets of paper. EMT completes a pre-hospital assessment sheet for the patient she just transported. She doesn't see any nurses at the nurses station, so she leaves the carbon copy for the hospital on the keyboard in front of one of the nurses' chairs where she's sure a nurse will find it. Were there any risks for a HIPAA violation?
Yes.
What were those risks?
I mean, what if somebody comes over behind there is not a nurse?
Or
Unfortunately, the problem is I try to hand the paper to the nurse every time, and they act like it's the plague. None of them want to touch it because that means it's their patient.
Right.
I will leave it.
I mean, we can throw it at them, and they will jump out of the way. If they couldn't get out of the way any quicker if it was on fire.
That's why they sign it.
So you actually require, well, they have to sign it.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they can sign it.
Like, I need you to sign right here, and now here's your copy.
Yeah, and that's actually what I do. I rip it and try to hand it to them. Most of the time, it's at the linen hamper, and I set it on the linen hamper, but their hand's normally on the hamper. They pull it away real quick.
All right.
You touched it with yours.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Go take those.
What about this scenario? The sticky notes with all the passwords around the computer.
AKA my mom.
That's a Tuesday, bro.
Yeah, that's. Well, I haven't.
I think it is, yeah.
Okay. Yes, that's a HIPAA violation.
Oh.
Also, I'll say that, there's another one where it's got it underneath the keyboard, so this is the same
Oh.
thing. You have to secure your password.
That's a reasonable protection though, under the keyboard.
At least it's covered if it's under the keyboard.
Covered.
Maybe it's better
All you
than,
gotta do is flip it up.
well, that's true,
flips
but
up
at
a
least it's
keyboard?
covered. I mean, I'll be honest with
If they
you.
made a cartoon about it, that means somebody is done it.
Just
So,
Who taped
here's
somebody's mouth?
what happens if I go to the
Who taped
restroom and I'm
somebody's
just
mouth?
going into the restroom right next to my desk in there.
I mean,
I
Now,
learned it from
granted,
mine.
somebody could walk over and flip it up, but they have to make a reasonable effort to flip it over. I mean, they can't just walk over and look at it. So, I probably should carry it in the bathroom. It would end up in the toilet. I mean, that's just the way things happen with me. So,
You have a
Especially.
portfolio there that has a zipper around it, don't you?
yeah, but not at
There'd be all
work.
kinds of pee on it.
Because you have to remember, we have gloves, we have blood,
Yeah.
things that close are not good.
You also have clipboards, right?
You do, now I actually have a clipboard I close in half, and that's how I do it at work, because it actually folds in half and you can't see it. So that's what I carry on the truck, so yes.
Same bag?
I don't know.
That's even more secure. All right, so here we've got text messages. EMT gets called to a mall where a patient is unconscious. He thinks he recognizes the patient from a previous run. He wants to consult the records from that run, since the patient's unconscious.
That's a no-no.
He texts a fellow EMT who's back at the hospital or back here, asks her to text the records from the previous run to him. Any risks for a HIPAA violation there?
Text.
Yeah.
A huge delay in care.
Cannot do any kind of patient information via text, unless you were in your secure
Secure
messaging
chat.
app. Does anyone use it? Do you all use it? Okay, good.
Because right now my phone goes, no, I did. Like who's listening to me?
I tried.
You did that way too long.
I call it the mothership.
The mother.
Documents between runs. It's been a very busy day for EMTs. It seems like everyone is having an emergency today. In a rush to treat the next patient, an EMT puts the current patient's form on top of the last patient's document on his clipboard. Any risks for HIPAA violations here?
I mean, if you can get it mixed up later, but if you're going through it before you,
I mean, you retain possession of the clipboard, right?
You retain possession of the clipboard, but you've got patient A underneath, now you've got patient B on
that's how
top.
they stack in the clipboard though. You open the top and you put it all inside.
But they're inside, right?
Yeah.
But nobody's seeing it but me, so there's no violation, there's no outgoing information.
Well, I didn't say, is there a risk of violation? The question is there a risk of violation? What
Oh,
happens?
it's a risk.
Oh, there's always a risk.
There's always a risk.
What happens if you put the clipboard down to treat
Go to
that
the
patient?
bathroom.
Well, the rest
I mean, I guess your partner could pick it up and write on the wrong one. I mean, yes, there's a risk there.
So what would be a better solution to that situation?
Put it
Have
inside
10
the clipboard.
clipboards.
Put it inside the clipboard.
And that's, I mean, you're right, we actually have them that flip open and then, yeah.
Our pre-hospital sheets are also carbon copy, so whatever you write on the top copy will transfer to the carbon of
Yeah.
the second
That's a
page.
good point.
And as you hand that over, it's a different patient, possibly going to different staff,
That's a
so
great point,
a
yeah.
concern.
And if you flip it over and write on the back of it, it'll just be on the back of the
Right.
page. So, yeah, it's set up for failure, the whole system.
Well, it sounds like you guys have gotten some good methods to like put patient A's documents inside the
Oh,
clipboard
yeah.
while you're dealing with patient B, right? That's the safest way.
Listen, you're being judgy again.
All right, we've got communication with patients via social media. Patient posts on Facebook, she's grateful to the EMTs who cared for her during a recent health scare. One of those providers is Facebook friends with the patient, sees the post and wants to respond to the patient's kind message. EMT replies to the post, "I'm so glad we could be there. You're such a strong woman that I knew you'd be fine once we got you to the hospital. Your heart is as strong as you are." Why is that a violation?
It's
Well, maybe or maybe not, I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean there's anything wrong with her heart, maybe they mean in spirit, her heart's as strong as she is. I mean, seriously.
Facebook's the devil.
Attach you to the scene.
I would reasonably
No,
think
Chuck, you
it's
the
a
devil.
violation because I'm acknowledging the fact that I didn't provide care on social media.
Right.
That's all.
Right. What are some things that you could do instead of post on social media? If you see this post, what could you do that would have the same meaning?
Send him a private message?
Make a visit.
Like it. Like it.
Well, you could like it, I guess.
Like
but you could call them. If you know this person and you provided care, they are truly your friend, you could call them and say, saw
Like
your
it.
post, thanks so much for the shout out. I'm glad you're doing okay.
Send an encrypted letter via snail mail.
There you go.
I really don't on social media because you're damned if you do, damned if you don't.
I don't disagree.
And you're just
Maybe a couple letters in the newspapers and magazines.
Yeah, they're serial killer style, so the same type stuff.
Yes.
Encouraging rancher. He's encouraging you.
Yeah,
That's
you
a good
cut out
question.
letters.
So we've got a question here. What if the patient in her post on social media actually called you out by name and said you did such a good job?
Just say thanks. I mean, if you have to respond at all, I mean, I don't even like that.
I don't think you respond at all.
Yeah.
You can go in there and be like, untag me from this post.
Yeah.
Right. Like,
Yeah, you don't respond. If you know the person and the person is truly your friend, pick up the phone and call them.
Right.
Please
Don't
untag me
put
in
it in
that
a
post.
public space.
Right.
What?
I mean, it opens you up later on, even if you just say one word, then somebody else could put two and two together way down the road, 2 years from now, and put you together with something and start asking
Next thing you know, you're
questions.
canceled.
You're right.
Shark attack.
So these are just tips. 2-second rule before you post on social media. What would my employer think? This is partly in the situation that I just described, but also if you're having a bad day at work, don't go air your grievances on how terrible your day was on social media. It's
That's what
just,
social media is for.
don't do it within a work context because you are a representative of your job and your community, so keep that in mind.
I know a guy.
We actually have this issue when we have a patient having a heart attack and we send the 12 lead to Floyd is the worst place.
Yeah.
And we'll tell them that we sent you a 12 lead. And the charge nurse wants us to take a picture of the 12 lead and send it to their phone so they can text it to the cardiologist. No, it's not my problem. Take a picture with your phone and send it to the cardiologist.
Well, it's also a violation of HIPAA.
Exactly.
That's what you need to tell her next
Oh, they're
time.
not.
Well, it's not only a violation of HIPAA, it's a violation. We can be fired because we can be fired because it's against our hospital policy in general. That with HIPAA notwithstanding.
Yes.
And they get all mad at us about it. And yeah, and they
Well,
just
it's saying,
yeah.
normal, transmit to you.
I think the key here is don't post about patient events on social media. Don't air your grievances with your employer on social media. Follow your policy on social media. If you have one, if you don't know. All right. Whether you like it or not, you are a representative of your community and your job here. So keep that in mind. Pick the right place to process. You know, you all are in some emotionally charged situations just by the nature of your job. So don't take it out in a public forum. You know, this social media audit, if you are active on social media, think about, and you post a lot, think about how your posts reflect on you and any future employment or current employment, that kind of thing. One of the things I do in my job is if somebody is involved in a case, I immediately go to social media and find out how much information I can find on this incident or on this person. It is one of the most, when we have new attorneys working for us, they're like, please give me some social media research because they're, one, really good at it, and two, they can find things that you thought you deleted. It's kind of scary.
Well, my partner's great at it. If within 30 seconds of finding out a patient's name, she knows more about them than I've known people for 30 years. I mean, she can just show you pictures and everything else. I mean, it's a great resource, especially if you want to find dirt on somebody. So,
Find a kid. Find somebody who's younger than
oh, you're right.
I'm telling you, like.
Spoiler alert, the last homicide that we had at the casino, How do you think we found the shooter?
Social
Oh,
media.
probably, yeah. That doesn't surprise me in the least.
Surely they didn't brag.
Next scenario. EMT goes into a patient's record to retrieve information pertinent to completing her task. In doing so, she accidentally opens the wrong file and reads protected health information not authorized to her task. After reading enough to realize it's not the correct file, she closes it and continues with her task. Are there any risk of a HIPAA violation here?
Maybe, but she acted correctly?
Yeah, I mean, she
Did what she was supposed to do. It was incidental, it was on accident. So as soon as she realized it, she stopped, exited out of it, continued with her task, done. No HIPAA violation.
Her job.
She knows her role.
Right. No HIPAA violation there. The nosy EMT. EMT notices an ambulance in her neighbor's driveway. Concerned and curious about what happened, she decides to look at her neighbor's chart to see if she can help, so she can keep the rest of her neighbors in the loop. That's a little bit exaggerated, but
100%.
every single one of you have encountered something like this. Maybe not you as the person, but you've encountered people doing that. This is another part 2. You're preparing for your next shift, and you're looking over the previous shift's patient documents, just so you can see.
Yeah.
You want to know if the service has been busy because you're bored waiting on your next call. Any risks to that violation? Is it necessary for you to do that?
No.
For your task, Ann? No.
Is anybody bored?
That's a violation. After finishing a run, 2 EMTs begin, I don't know why I kept using EMTs, we'll throw some paramedics in there. 2 paramedics begin to walk to the hospital's cafeteria where other patients and people might be able to overhear them. You all have a natural walk to the cafeteria if you go in the hospital to eat there.
They did the distinguishing feature.
They talk extensively about the patient's condition, including the odd tattoo on the patient's face. Is there a HIPAA violation?
Yep.
Yes, the tattoos can be one of the indicators. So maybe if you had that conversation without any reference to the patient's tattoo and there's no other patient identifier in that conversation, no HIPAA violation. 2 paramedics are discussing a patient's care at the hallway of the ER. They notice another patient standing in front of them to ask a question. So as soon as they see that patient, they stop talking. Any risk of a HIPAA violation?
There's a risk, but they didn't.
Depends on what all they were saying and what all
And their level of
conversation
sneakiness.
I
included.
think there's a risk for it.
How
There's
long
a
have you been
risk
there?
for it,
Long enough.
There's always a
but I
risk.
think the important thing here is, one, you don't know, you're giving it, the conversation naturally is getting information out, right? You're not intending for that to be disclosed to this stranger, and once the stranger has been identified or you recognize them, then you stop.
You're not wrong by saying 2 EMTs too, because ultimately we're all EMTs.
Well,
I mean,
they're,
there's just different levels.
right. I just didn't realize until I started reviewing. I'm using EMT all the time, so.
Yeah.
It was on my brain. Okay, here we go, law enforcement situation. After taking care of the patient, EMT gets on social media, notices that local law enforcement have issued a warrant for the patient. EMT notifies his supervisor, and then the supervisor calls the police and informs them of the patient's name and location at the hospital. Any risks of HIPAA violations?
An ongoing police.
No. No risk of a HIPAA violation here.
I dropped that cracker at Harrison just 20 minutes ago. Go get him.
You know, that's the thing, if you don't give me patient information, I mean, a person's a person, they have a name.
Yeah, well,
If you know who they are by their body.
well, this is a warrant. You've confirmed there's a warrant for the person's arrest. You know that patient and you know the location of the patient. It is not a HIPAA violation for you to share that with law enforcement.
There was no protected.
And you notified your supervisor.
Yeah, there is.
They are the ones that
Supervisor,
contacted.
yeah.
So that ain't on me, bro. That's on you.
Right. Technically.